Hello my friends. Today in the Metal Shop Workshop we are talking about the Gibson Tune-O-Matic bridge. This is an Epiphone, but same difference. I apologize that this guitar is filthy, but as you know from a previous video, I don't play this one very much. It came with just a god-awful setup from the Epiphone factory in China, even though it was supposedly kissed by the hands of Gibson techs in the United States. It's just an awful setup. But anyway, I digress. So we're going to talk about the Tune-O-Matic bridge. Just hopefully this will be a very brief video. Basically, I did some research on, not the different bridges, not the Nashville, not the, the ABR-1, whatever. I'm not going to get into those specifics, but I'm just going to get into some overall basics of the bridge. And I wanted to know, and I got on YouTube, what is the correct alignment for the bridge, and there wasn't really a good video, just a definitive video stating what is correct from the factory. And I've done quite a bit of research, and what I found is that the way that this bridge is aligned is correct from the Gibson Epiphone factory. Take it for what it's worth. I'm not saying that this is right, I'm not saying that it's wrong, I'm just saying that this is the way that Gibson ships them out, and I don't know if they've done it since they came up with this bridge in the 50s or not. Maybe back then, people correct me if I'm wrong, so be it. But this is how they do it now, and how I believe they've done it for quite some time. So, first things first, the adjustment screws from the factory always point towards the front. They always are going towards the neck. They always point to the front. Factory setting. Does it matter if you flip it around and the screws point to the back? You prefer it that way? It doesn't matter, as long as your intonation is set up correctly. Each individual little saddle, okay, from the factory, the flat faces towards the back, towards the butt of the guitar, towards the bridge on the 3 lower wound strings. They do that because you get just a little bit more adjustment towards the rear, towards the side with the flat on it. And traditionally, you guys know that your bridge is going to look like kind of like a set of steps, with the bass strings are going to be towards the back of the guitar, and the treble strings are going to be more towards the neck of the guitar. So conversely, if the 3 bass strings, the flat points to the back of the guitar, then the 3 flats on your treble strings, on your non-wound strings, point towards the neck of the guitar. That's just the way it is set up from the factory, okay? Take it for what it's worth. You want to have them all facing one way, power to you. You want to switch every other one, that's fine. The reason they do that is for the adjustment. Again, you get more adjustment, and you might need it having the flat point in that direction. Okay, great. So what about the status of your tailpiece here? Is this the correct way? This is the way, again, that it comes from the factory, just like this. And if you'll see, I'm going to try and get down here and show you, my strings on this guitar are not touching the back of the Tune-O-Matic. That is because the tailpiece, the stop bar tailpiece, is raised up a little bit. Some guys like to have the stop bar tailpiece cranked all the way down, flush up against the guitar. They say it helps in sustain, whatever. If your mileage may vary, go ahead and crank the thing down and see if it sounds better. I would think that it would sound better being mounted more solid to the guitar. I mean, I've seen some of these things cranked way up high, and you don't want that because there's a lot of force in this direction. The strings are pulling this thing directly in this direction, and having it cranked down, having there not be a lot of gap here, I think is a good thing. So, but the problem is, okay, so now we want to crank this bridge all the way down to the face of the guitar for stability, for tuning, for sustain, whatever. What that does is that makes the strings here hit the back of your Tune-O-Matic, and that's not good. Right now, the strings are pushing down on this thing. I mean, you have to raise it up. It has to be where it's got to be for your action to be proper. This one's way too high. It's got to go down. Again, crappy setup. But they're generally up pretty high. That's just the nature of the Gibson. The neck is angled back at quite a bit of, it's got quite a steep neck angle. You have to crank up this bridge to compensate for that. So what happens if you crank the tailpiece all the way down up against the guitar face? these strings, like I said, these strings will ride on the back here, and you do not want that. They'll start digging in, and what they'll do is they force your Tune-O-Matic, they exert pressure on it again this way, and they'll start the thing, make the thing lean, okay, which you do not want. So what guys do, Billy Gibbons, the Reverend, is famous for doing this. He may have been the first, I don't know. Maybe you guys know who was first. Zach Wilde does it. They do the wraparound, where the ball end of the string starts on this side of the bridge and it wraps over it, gives it a little bit more space so that your strings don't touch your Tune-O-Matic. And what that does, unfortunately, is it causes your extra windings, and you can just see them peeking out here. I'm not going to restring this thing. It causes your windings to be up over on the face of this guitar. And the problem is then, for when you're playing, for your palm mutes and so on, you're getting your hand, it'll scratch up the surface here, and it's also going to dig into your hand. So someone came up with a brilliant idea, and I've seen a bunch of videos out there on YouTube about this, is they'll use a spare ball end from your strings. So cut an extra ball end off. These are obviously D'Addario because they're colored. Cut an extra ball end off and use it as a spacer. So now when you feed your string through, use that extra ball end as a spacer, and it will keep all your windings off of this face and underneath, and then it keeps your strings off your Tune-O-Matic, and away we go. So that's a little bit about the Tune-O-Matic. Again, this is from the factory. I just want to show you, I'll give you a pause and I'll show you on a couple of my other guitars here just for laughs. Hang on. Okay, so this is my Gibson Explorer, and I changed the hardware on this, and I actually put this on backwards. The adjustment screws, the intonation screws, are facing towards the back of the guitar, and they're supposed to face towards the front. And you know, ha ha ha, that's really unlike me to make a mistake. But what I think I did, this is more like me, is I either took a picture of it or I set this bridge up exactly like the chrome bridge was that I took off, and I set the intonation exactly the same. That's something that I would absolutely do. You guys have seen a video on this guitar, but anyway, this one is the intonation screws are facing the back. These are all of the flats are facing towards the front on this, and I guarantee you I didn't change those. That is the way that this bridge came. Is it right? Is it wrong? No, it intonates, plays great, sounds great. So let's move on to the next one. Alright, so this one is an 81 Les Paul Custom that came with all nickel hardware, and it came with this fine-tuning tailpiece, FTP1, whatever Gibson calls it, whatever trendy cool name they have for it. I like it. I actually run a locking clamp on this guitar. This is a kind of a Sykes replica, again, 81 Les Paul Custom. Now this one I did not monkey with, but being from 1981, who knows how many times this has changed. They have, the intonation screws are pointing towards the back of the guitar, not towards the front, and if you look, the flats pointing towards the back, 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 front. Alright, this did not come from the factory this way. This has obviously been monkeyed with. Does it matter? Again, it doesn't matter. This guitar plays great, sounds great, intonates correctly. I have no issues with it whatsoever. Again, so I have one more. Okay, and just for grins, here we have, this is, I believe it's made in Indonesia, but this is an acrylic BC Rich Mockingbird that I put the DiMarzio pickups on. I should do a video about this guitar. I noticed that Paul Crook did roughly the same thing when he was with Anthrax. He put white gaffer's tape on the back of his, and he colored up the pickups. I actually did mine. I got the idea from a George Lynch poster that I had, where he has an Ibanez Gem, and I was like, man, those pickups would look great in my pea green Mockingbird. Anyway, so this, anyways, this is a, you know, not a Gibson, but it's a knockoff, an Asian knockoff, but the flats on the treble, on the bass strings are all pointing towards the back. The flats on the treble strings are all pointing towards the front, and the intonation screws are pointing towards the front. So that's clearly set up the standard way. Again, there's no rules. There's no right and there's no wrong. I mean, Eddie Van Halen used to put together guitars from parts and boxes and just, you know, crap, and he didn't worry about intonation, didn't worry about anything, and he played and sounded great. So he's just a kid. You know, he's bolting guitars together out of scraps and sounded amazing. So, but I love the FTP fine-tuning tailpiece. I run it on this guitar too, and that enables me to We're on a locking clamp for the ultimate in tuning stability. So we'll leave off on this guitar. I'll try and back up and get a better shot of it here. I got a bunch of junk in the way. So yeah, just a little bit on the Gibson Tune-O-Matic tailpiece. Again, your mileage may vary. You guys, please hit me up in the comments with your thoughts on, did Gibson do it differently in the 50s? Am I missing something here? Is this not the standard way to do it? I welcome all constructive comments. Just trying to help some guys out. This is what I found. This is the proper factory method to set up your Tune-O-Matic tailpiece. This is how Gibson sends them from the factory. Just like this, my friends. As always, thanks for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you're so inclined. If you're new, consider subscribing. Give me a share. As always, my friends, take care. Thanks.